Now then, people, good afternoon and welcome back to the Just Joe football show. Today we are going to be talking about our current rivals in the race for promotion, Leicester City, and the latest charges handed down by the Premier League to another team that cheated their way around FFP and ultimately have now been found out and are on the cusp of receiving a points deduction. Quite a few teams now affected by this, obviously. More recently, Everton, Nottingham Forest and Manchester City do also face charges, 115 to be precise. But that case does differ slightly. That's more so about cooking the books as opposed to, flat out just saying, right, we've got this rule that says we can lose 105 million. We don't care. We're going to lose more than that. Look, whatever you think of FFP and in the game and whether or not you think it's right and it keeps the rich and the poor, all this sort of stuff, ultimately the Premier League clubs, Leeds United included, signed on the dotted line to say, yes, we agree with this. If you've then not adhered to those rules, you are in breach and therefore you are bound to be punished for that. Leicester fans won't like this, Everton fans, Forest fans, it is what it is. But ultimately, you've cheated, and if you've cheated, you will then be punished accordingly. So we're going to go through the particulars of the case, going through them, what that means for Leicester City this season, into next season, and if that will have any bearing whatsoever on this season's championship running. Obviously, Leicester City, a club that recently won the Premier League and the FA Cup. Premier League was won just 7 years ago now, find themselves embroiled in a legal battle because Leicester City have come out swinging. They are saying they are going to take the football authorities to task on this, okay, because the Premier League has charged Leicester City with allegedly breaking spending rules during their last 3 seasons in the top flight. The charges stem from the club's failure to submit audited financial accounts for the 22-23 season, despite their subsequent relegation to the championship. Just because you're not in the division doesn't mean that you will not be punished. That's like committing a crime in one country, shipping off to another and saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter, I'm in another country. Ultimately, you might not get extradited back to that country and not have to face those charges, but if you ever did, then you would be punished. And that's similarly the same as Leicester City right now, right? If they don't go back to the Premier League, they may not be punished, although the EFL are not done with Leicester yet and do say that they're also looking into prospective charges. So what are the key points in this case? Well, the Premier League alleges that Leicester City breached profit and sustainability rules during the last 3 seasons, and the club faces an independent commission for these alleged breaches. If found guilty, the high-flying championship team could potentially face a points deduction. Additionally, Leicester City is under a separate financial investigation by the EFL. Now, Leicester City have obviously responded to these charges and expressed their surprise and disappointment at the timing of the Premier League's actions. I don't know why you're surprised when you've been asked to provide books for last season and you've failed to do so. I'm sure the Premier League have said, yo, Leicester, have you got them books yet? And you know what I mean? Like, they haven't just sprung this on Leicester. Everyone knew this was in the offing. I would argue that those at Leicester City knew this was in the offing way before we did. But Leicester City argue that the charges come at a time when the club is not even in the top flight. That does not matter. For me personally, Leicester fans may disagree. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. It doesn't matter that you're not in the league. Like I've said before, you can make loads of different situations as to when, it's like saying, oh, well, I'm abroad and, I cheated on my missus and went with someone else, but it doesn't matter because it was in another postcode. It was in another country, love. Like, relax. Doesn't work like that, does it? But the club have said they vow to defend themselves against any unlawful acts by the football authorities. Do we feel that this is unlawful, them being charged for something that they've done? I would argue not. But Leicester City have said they are willing to engage constructively with both the Premier League and the EFL to seek a proper resolution. I call cap, I call BS, because as I said, you've been asked to provide your books for last season and failed to do so. That to me says you are not engaging constructively. If you look at Nottingham Forest's case, and we will touch on this briefly, they only got a 4 points deduction, and a lot of that was due to the fact that they were engaging with the Premier League, and therefore, it's like if you go to court and you go guilty early, you will get a reduced sentence as to those that will go all the way to trial, for example, and then be found guilty. It's like you've wasted our time. That's why Everton got a bigger sanction than what Forest did. So I would argue, if you did do that, happy days for you. But I would argue you're not doing that, hence why, the Premier League have thrown down these charges, because you're yet to provide details of last season's. But what is the actual financial context in this case then? So the club's financial situation has been challenging. Every club's financial situation has been challenging. In the 12 months up to May 2022, the club reported a record loss of 92.5 million, which is wild, when you think that they are, the season before, they'd just lifted the FA Cup, beating Chelsea in the final. Now, even when they won the FA Cup that season, their pre-tax loss was 33.1 million. And the Premier League rules allow clubs to incur losses of up to 105 million. So in them 2 seasons alone, they have gone over that threshold. Now, as we touched on briefly, both Everton and Forest have also fell foul to these rules and have faced similar charges related to their accounts in 22-23. Nottingham Forest were found guilty and received a 4-point deduction, and Everton had previously been docked points, which has been reduced to 6 on appeal. But Everton still have another case to answer, so they may get some further points deductions. But in Leicester City's case, what's the timeline on this? When will this be taken to task? Well, the independent commission will determine the timescale for the case, including any appeals. Sanctions, if they are applicable, may be enforced beyond the end of this season. So we may not get a resolution this season. Obviously, May's just around the corner, the end of the season. We've only got 8 games left in the Championship. And let's not forget, Leicester don't just have one case to answer. They now face 2 financial investigations, with the EFL also scrutinising their compliance with PSR rules. So if Leicester are found guilty of breaching spending rules, they may face a points deduction. This could then impact their performance in the Championship and their chances of promotion back to the Premier League. A points deduction might hinder their ability to secure a top position in the league, affecting their aspirations for promotion. I don't agree with dealing with these cases after the season's finished. I think it's a bit wild. It's the same in the Premier League. If you were to then hand sanctions down once the season's finished, it's a little bit unfair. Leicester could be there celebrating promotion, then the EFL come in and say, actually, you're going to get 10 points deducted, which means you're now in the playoffs. It's a bit of a, it's a minefield when it comes to this stuff. They need to get this resolved before the 4th of May, ideally. What does this mean long term as well? For me, the signs were there in January when there was noise of potentially Keenan Dewsbury Hall being sold to a Premier League club. That set the cat amongst the pigeons. They didn't sign anyone in January. I know Enzo wasn't happy about this, and their form has fallen off a cliff. This could then impact them as well, because there is a sense of uncertainty around the football club. Do also players like Dewsbury Hall and others of his skill level look at it and think, well, I might not even be here at the end of next season. I might have to be sold to, ensure that we, adhere to PSR in the future. Could we be subject to a points deduction even if we do get promoted and therefore starting off, behind everyone else? So this could obviously have major impact. Will even Enzo Maresca want to manage the football club knowing he may be going into a season with a points deduction? It can also hamper the reputation. Who can forget Leicester were the barometer? We're following the Leicester model. We used to hear it at Leeds United for quite some time. A lot of people would want to follow that model. We now have Brighton, we now have Brentford, but for a period of time, Leicester were the club to follow. So this has impacts then on their reputation, because legal battles can tarnish a club's reputation. So even if Leicester successfully defend themselves, the negative publicity may linger. Sponsors and commercial partners may closely monitor the situation, and any prolonged legal dispute could affect existing sponsorships and future deals at the football club. The effects can be far and wide, player retention and recruitment, as I've just mentioned. Players often prefer to compete at the highest level. If Leicester City aren't competing there due to points deduction, they may lose some of these better players. Not may, they will. And it also means then in the summer, even if you were promoted and you were then given a points deduction, it even makes player recruitment really difficult, because who's going to want to come to a football club that's starting off behind everyone else in what already is the hardest league in the world? Obviously, this affects the fans as well. We have to spare a moment for them. Look, they might not like what I'm saying. I wouldn't like it if it was my club, but ultimately the club has cheated and the fans are being punished for that. Fans invest emotionally in their team, any sort of legal battles that are ongoing, especially when it, can end with a points deduction, it creates anxiety amongst the fan base. Like, as a Leeds United fan, I'm reaping the rewards. Do you know what I mean? It's like that scene from The Wedding Singer when he goes, he's losing his mind, and I'm reaping all the benefits. It's like that, because ultimately they now come back from the international break with all this hanging over their head. If results don't start to go the way, the fans already are anxious about the season and the points deduction, they then start to worry. There's a real uncertainty it creates as well, because you would think, since the turn of the year, really, even into February, I would argue, Leicester were stonewall going to the Premier League. That's now definitely been thrown into the air. There's a lot of uncertainty around that, not least because Leeds are now top, Ipswich and Southampton breathing down the necks. Leicester need to come back from the international break firing on all cylinders. If they don't, then it looks bleak for them. It really does look bleak. It almost feels like, from me, like January, it's been like a deck of cards, just like all falling. There was the Dewsbury Hall stuff that took everyone by surprise. Oh no, we've got money. Then no signings coming in at all for a club that was top of the league. Then we start to hear these charges. Their forms dropped off a cliff. Fans were unhappy with Enzo Ball, etc. Genuinely, it feels like it's crumbling all around them. So the long-term planning as well, for me now, has been thrown up into the air. Because, of course, at a football club, you've got to manage short-term, long-term, what the plans are. And for a long period of time, they'd have just been planning for the Premier League. Well, this is their form, and definitely the potential points deduction has definitely thrown that up into the air, because they now need to put a strategy for both Championship and potential Premier League return. I know you would expect football clubs to do this anyway, but there's no guarantees, because if that was the case and you were due diligent, you wouldn't be getting points deductions. My club didn't receive them. Southampton haven't. There are other clubs that have adhered to these rules. Brentford's, Brighton's, Crystal Palace, that may also have been in the same sort of ballpark. Let's not forget, Leicester won a Premier League and an FA Cup. There was money there. It was just poorly spent and poorly mismanaged. And it's sad, because obviously they're Premier League winners, FA Cup winners in the last decade. But if Leicester didn't go up and did receive points deduction, we could have another Leeds on our hand. I genuinely think it could get that bleak, because the Championship, as we know, if you don't get up during them parachute payments, they're going to be a mass exodus of players if they didn't go up this season. You then run the risk of tumbling down the table and therefore tumbling out of the league, because the Championship, in terms of revenue, offers far less compared to the Premier League, and a prolonged stay in the second tier affects the club's finances like insurmountably, exponentially. And can Leicester, especially with PSR, I'm not saying they're skint, but can Leicester, with the PSR implications, come back for this? Ultimately, it's not looking good for Leicester right now. As Castillo would say, it is not looking good, bruv. They've got to successfully defend the case, defend the charges, ensure that they don't get a points deduction that doesn't see them get promoted, or at least sees them start the Premier League campaign behind everyone else if they did get up, and then managing the financial situation going forward for any future prospects, keeping hold of top players, etc. Can you all do this with this risk of points deduction on top? We're already seeing this morning Nottingham Forest are on about selling the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White, etc. They will have to do this now to cut their cloth accordingly. It's going to be very interesting watching this unfold. I'll keep you updated as best I can. Obviously, proper football returns in just a week's time, Good Friday, and Leicester play first against Bristol City. as a Leeds United fan, just like taking it away from the information and that, like, I am laughing. We are laughing. But look, I do feel sorry for the fans, but ultimately, you tried to gain a sporting advantage by cheating, and it didn't come off, and now you're being punished for that. That's what the rules stipulate. It is what it is. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this topic. Do you think they deserve a points deduction? Should they be getting it right now? Let me know. Please do smash a like on the video. As I say, the international breaks are tough, so please do smash a like, comment, share it, whatever you can. Hit the notification bell, and of course, please do subscribe, and I'll see you in a bit. Peace out.